That'll do.
Yeah, that'll do.
Cool.
And welcome back to the Science Podcast.
Coming up, as we've been calling this podcast.
Yeah.
We've got a mystery guest tonight. Usually we have a mystery object that we play with, but tonight we're going to be playing with our mystery guest. They're an old friend of Reuben and I's. We all share a particular patch of skin.
Wait. Go back to play with me. I'm still not clear.
No. Please be more explicit.
Well, we all share the same patch of skin, but copied on different parts of our bodies. So, to introduce themselves tonight, we have...
Me, Miffany Worth.
I'm
the famous astrologist. No, it's me, renowned linguist Elliot Peck.
And I'm Alan Bro, the other host on Spicks and Specs, because it kind of sounded like you said Miff Warhurst, but it's not quite that. And
I'm drunk. So tonight I'm going to be talking about... I'm going to jump into it and just like get some order with you rascals.
Rough.
I want to talk about the scientific method because it's actually a super useful tool. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it's really useful, and you often don't really think about how useful it is, or at least like you don't really use it in your day-to-day life. So I was struck with a mystery the other day. I moved house and I took out my scales. I hadn't used them for like a few weeks. I was expecting to be a little bit heavier because I got a little bit fat. Stood on them and I weighed 10 kilos heavier. And I was like, wow, God, I must be fat. But then, to my aid came the scientific method. So there are a few hypotheses that I could come up with. Hypotheses. One, I gained a lot of weight. That was my first hypothesis. What is something that can disprove that hypothesis? You have to have something that can disprove the hypothesis. Otherwise you don't know anything. What is it?
Is it that you measured yourself with a tape measure?
Yeah, kind of. I just looked at my belly.
Yeah,
I was like, is this fat?
Do.
And it wasn't any fatter than it was before. So that's your hypothesis disproven. Then you can be like, all right, we know it's not that thing. It's super important that you come up with a hypothesis before you check if it's true, because otherwise you don't know if you've made a prediction that's valid, and you might trick yourself into thinking it's true.
But what if you just still gained weight and it just went to your butt or something?
I suppose that's possible.
For those listening at home, Hunter's butt actually is really, really big.
Thanks.
So, just imagine that.
I store water there.
I'm a camel.
That's totally possible. So the fact that there's no fat on my belly is evidence against the hypothesis, but it doesn't completely disprove it. So I went into the second hypothesis, which is that there was the thing had been broken during its travel. Well, that's a hypothesis you can't prove or disprove. Like, there's no way to test if it's broken without getting another thing to stand on, which I didn't have, another scale. So I can't disprove that. So it's not a very useful hypothesis. So on to the next one, which is that something's changed between using it here at my new house and using it at my old house.
Was it the floor?
That was my thought. Could it be the floor?
Yeah.
This was on carpet. So, hypothesis. The carpet has something to do with it giving you a heavier measurement. So you got to test that. You got to make the guess and then figure out if it's right. So I put it on floorboards and voila, I weighed 10 kilos less again.
Why though? How,
Right.
sideline, how is that anything to do with how scales work?
Well, now we know it's got something to do with on carpet, off carpet, and we can use that to figure out the next piece. We go publish that in a paper, and then someone's like, all right, well, why did this bit happen? They got to come up with a hypothesis for that. Can you think of one, either of you?
Is it that there is stronger resistance with floorboards, so that when you stand on... Okay, this is me just like... when you stand on carpet, right, like it sinks in easier. Like gravity has a stronger effect because there's less resistance from the carpet than there is for floorboards.
Okay, well let's think about that one. So
because you're heavier on the carpet.
So it could be that we're heavier on the carpet.
Like imagine if you put the scales on a pillow, and then like instead of like sitting on the top of the pillow, it sinks all the way through it because the pillow doesn't give any resistance. It's like a less intense version of that.
Yeah, but isn't the scale the scale is measuring like the pressure or like the amount of displacement between the force on top of it and the force beneath it.
Yeah.
So, right. Sorry, I was thinking the
the
other way.
scale is measuring how much is getting squashed, we think.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't make a difference whether or not it's pushed, whether or not you sink in as you get squashed, because whatever point you stop at,
Well, because
should
the
still be
force
measuring the full
against the
force.
force against, like, let's say the top pane of the let's say, it's a piece of glass or whatever. The force against that pane of glass should be the same regardless of what is underneath it, right?
yeah, because if the force was different, then gravity itself would have to change, or we'd be continuing to fall.
Which we all know it does, dependent upon how much fried chicken I eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah, gravity change.
But you're onto something there. That's like the main difference between the carpet and floorboards, isn't it? One you sink into and the other you don't. Is there another way that sinking into it could affect the way the scale works?
Is it the distribution of the weight?
Let's have a look at the distribution of the weight.
Because if you like, again, let's take the pillow analogy. If you that's it, I got it. Standing on the scales on a pillow, then it's going to sink down the pillow, and the pressure in the center is going to be stronger. Whereas when the resistance is more sturdy from the bottom, the weight is spread across the whole thing, and you get an equalized weight.
Right, you're really onto something. So I had the same thought as Elliot there, and I picked it up and I looked at the bottom of the scale. It had 4 feet. So when you put it on a hard floor, the feet touch the floor. When you put it on the soft floor, the center has more pressure on it because the feet aren't taking all the weight. So then, how do you test this hypothesis? Could that be it?
How do you test that hypothesis?
I got a thin little book, and I put it in the middle underneath the scale so that the feet weren't touching the book. The book is hard, but it's only touching the middle
center.
of the scales rather than the corner feet. And then I stood on it, and I was really heavy. I gained 15 kilos when I stood on the scale that
you
way.
fatty.
So then, something about the middle of the scales makes it read more. So you pick it up and look at it, and there's the measurement device you can kind of see from the bottom is right in the middle of the scales.
Right.
But the resistance devices, the little springs that get pushed
edges.
together, there's 4 of them around the edges. So you're causing the scales to bend when you put them on something soft versus something hard. Bend differently than they would otherwise. So you muck up their measurement. So that's how the scientific method helped me work out why I was fatter on the scales.
So what's the best thing to put the scales on?
Floorboards.
Yeah.
That gets you the more accurate reading because the resistance is designed to be
The best thing to put scales on is nothing at all, because your weight should not define who you are. He says as he eats his 4th whole roast chicken, for those listening at home.
Yeah, Elliot is very fat. He's definitely got a body.
I am round!
So I really like the scientific method because it helps you figure out things that you wouldn't necessarily think of without it. And it lets you be very sure about those things.
I was having a conversation just the other day about specifically the scientific method, that I also am a big fan of the scientific method, and one of my favorite things about it is that, until it's proven wrong, the things that we prove right with tests are assumed to be accurate. If we have a finding and then we are able to reproduce that finding, then we're like, okay, well, we need to incorporate this into our understanding of how the world works, until somebody finds that is not the case, and then we go oh, yep, okay, let's undo that. And I think that is a really a really honorable way of uncovering the inverted commas objective truth of the world, because it's a very difficult thing to do. And
And looking at that point from sort of the other way, is that the easier something to prove wrong, the more sure we can be that it's right if we can't prove it wrong. So if I make a prediction this ball is going to fall to the ground at exactly 9.81 whatever meters per second, and then I measure it and it's exactly right, I can be pretty confident that my theory is correct there, or my hypothesis was has not been proven wrong. But even if it was off by a little bit, I'd be like, oh man, something is really wrong here. Whereas if my theory said something like the ball will fall to the ground at any speed at all, that's it's still
It's a
pretty
very
easy to fool wrong, but
difficult,
it's it's difficult. It's harder to prove wrong, so we should be less confident about that theory. Kind of like, was it Feynman that made the point about sort of social? He was talking about psychology studies not necessarily having this property, and saying, okay, so people look at someone who's been a very horrible person and they're in jail, and they say, okay, my hypothesis is that that's because his mother didn't love him enough. And then they go and look at it, and they find that, his mother did actually love him a fair bit, and said, okay, well, this is actually same theory. His mother loved him too much. It should have been right in the middle. But unless you say that beforehand, and unless it's the more narrow it is, the more confident you can be about it. And the earlier you say it, you have to say it before you look at the evidence to be confident that you've made the right guess, rather than tricked yourself into thinking that it's the right thing.
It's a confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
Aha, of course.
Yeah, because if it fits all the evidence, but you have already seen all the evidence before you come up with the idea, there could be millions of ideas that fit the evidence, but you want the one that fits the evidence most simply and can predict future things. That's kind of the purpose of coming up with a theory, so it can predict future things based off some limited evidence. Because otherwise you could just memorize all the evidence and you'd have all the information. Yeah.
I like it. What do you think of the scientific method, Reuben?
I think it's good.
All right, what do you want to talk about, Reuben?
How does the scientific method relate to the colonization of Hawaii?
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
Great segue, Elliot.
Thank you.
So, listeners at home, you'll remember that last fortnight I stumbled through a fairly vague description of the colonization of Hawaii, and this is crack number 2.
Wait, what if we hang on? What if we try something a bit cutting edge?
Yeah.
What if I try and recount to you what you told me this morning as we waited in the council chambers of Petersham Council?
Yeah.
And then you tell me how I'm wrong and elaborate upon that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, there was a king called Melakamikimaka.
Kamehameha.
Hang on, let me finish. And then you can tell me if there were any errors, which I doubt there will be.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a king called King Poketuna Mahalo, who...
Look at you poking tuna.
Yeah,
Poketuna.
Poketuna Mahalo.
You think of Native American names.
Yeah, and he was the king that was the first king of Hawaii, as the whole of Hawaii, because it's kind of hard to be the king of Hawaii because there are lots of little islands, and this is, a while back, kind of like 1980s.
That's like the
So
1780s.
Before boats.
he's there, listen to his boy George. Just let me know if there's any errors, but not yet. Wait until
Boy
the end.
George.
Yeah, he's listening to Kama Chameleon, ruling over the whole of Hawaii, saying, okay, cool, whatever. And then his son, who is King Kunukunu Hunahuna Makawa'a Waka 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 Niki Poo, comes along and is like, okay, cool, now I'm king of the whole of Hawaii, but I think that the whole religious system that we are following, which is quite strict, is a little bit of bullshit. So I'm gonna just make a decree to the whole of the kingdom that we are not gonna follow that religion anymore. And essentially what happened is this strict social structure that led these people of all of these religious kind of laws and practices dissolved, and they fell into anarchy, which simply left them prone to being open to the colonization of the missionaries, which came shortly after, because everything had fallen to shit, and they were like, thank God, yeah, we would love to take in the word of Jesus Christ. And then the horrors that we all know and love of colonization ensued.
Yes.
How's that?
That's pretty good.
Was that pretty accurate, Reuben?
Well, yeah, for that. Hello.
A Hawaiian's just come and joined us.
Indeed.
Welcome, Queen Tahiti.
Indeed. Hello.
So guys, to clear up, that was a pretty good description. To clear up So the interesting thing about the colonization of Hawaii is that it's not really, or like not even the colonization, but just like the social. Jesus Christ, the social upheaval that led to the kind of subduing of a culture wasn't directly. It wasn't like white people came in and just burned the whole place down. But the uniting of the first king, Kamehameha I, the reason he could get to control all the islands was because he got guns and amassed economic capital he got guns from Captain Cook and then realized that you could trade with white people, and then so that was like a big thing that he could like amass like capital and resources that didn't exist on the island, because before it was just a closed economic just fish and rice.
That would be like because they were like colonized very late.
I've seen Moana.
That's like 1700s.
Yeah, 1700s.
So like coming in with all that fancy late British technology to a place that had been totally isolated with just like, a few 100,000 people? Not even that, a few tens of thousands of people? They're very small islands.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know.
Like, that would have been such a big change for them.
Consider the coconut.
Because most places that get colonized, like say Australia or New Zealand or Africa or somewhere, they're attached to a big landmass, so they sort of know, like the people on the landmass kind of know that there's something beyond, because there's a place. I could keep walking that way, but it's way too far, so I'm going to stop. But I know something's over there.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on an island and you can't see any other islands near you, you're like, this is just the world. This is just it.
Oh yeah, but I think like Polynesia's like particular like that in that. Because everyone travels so much and there are so many islands between stuff, like everyone's kind of it's like every culture has like an origin island that they like came from.
Yeah, speaking of that, do you guys think that anyone ever gets confused between colonized and colonized? Like when something's turned into a colon? Like, oh no, when Australia was colonized, like when it turned into this big tube of digestive tract that essentially created feces.
Oh, I thought you
Which is a pretty accurate description of colonization.
I thought you were talking about like when you like take Australia and you put it in the form of like a really annoying first year student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry that keeps taking photos of Harry Potter after
that's colonized.
Yeah.
As opposed to the version of like Captain Cook arrives and he's a real punctuational pedant.
Yeah.
And he says no, if you have two independent clauses in a sentence but you want to conjoin them and one is kind of like superior to the other, then you put two dots in between them. Yeah.
Australia does look a bit like a colon, just like the top one's a bit bigger than the bottom bit of the colon.
Or this is probably the most stretchy one.
Like a colon.
Yeah.
But just when everyone starts wearing male's perfume.
When I am coming from a city in southeast Germany.
Cologne.
Colonized.
I don't know. There's lots of ways you could go with that.
All of these are related to the scientific method.
So, Elliot, continue. What did you want to talk about tonight? What's your linguistical fanasations?
Well, my fanasations are with the word fanasation. It's kind of
is that a real word?
It is now.
Hey,
because
linguists
words are a construct, aren't they? I mean, I could talk to you about Yod Coalescence.
What's Yod Coalescence?
Oh, well.
Tune.
Tune. So, for the listeners at home, and for all y'all sitting with me tonight.
All Yod, even.
All Yod. Just try and say the... Okay, so I want you to say the word of the second day of the week, like the word that comes after Monday. Just kind of
Tuesday.
like, yeah. What do you say, Nadia?
Just say Tuesday.
Go again?
I say Wednesday.
No, the one before that.
Sunday?
No, the one 2 days after that.
That's just that's Tuesday.
Yes, someone missed their weeks.
Nadia's from
do you
Hawaii.
say?
She doesn't really understand the
Tuesday.
Oh wow, Reuben from London, England.
Tuesday.
Yeah, so basically,
That wasn't that impressive.
No. So what you're looking for is you have to think about
What are you looking for?
You're looking for what your mouth is doing. So whether the word that you just said has the first syllable sounding like chew, like you like to chew something, or whether it's to you and it has that y sound, which is called a yod. That's the fancy linguist word for a y sound, a y, like the thing that starts yellow. So do you say Tuesday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
Well, yeah, for many...
You're saying it wrong, Reuben.
No, well...
Elliot says you're saying it wrong, you yod.
Yeah, yod, your common yod.
I'm a yid. I'm a hebe. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, that is bad. Yeah. Scratch that from the record.
Yeah, you
but
can edit this episode, Reuben.
Well, the thing is that for most young speakers of Australian English, the Tuesday version is most likely the common one, even though usually, or more historically, we would be saying Tuesday, which is maybe like an older Australian pronunciation or and even a British pronunciation. And that's a thing that is called Yod Coalescence, which is that Yod, the Y coalesces into this affricate, so it becomes Ch or J. The same thing happens when you talk about, I don't know, like, what do you call those big hills made of sand?
Sandhills.
No, almost. Starts with a D.
Dunes.
Yeah, dunes. And so if that is the same sound as the 6th month of the year,
June.
June, as opposed to June.
Duned?
Dune.
Oh, don't like that.
Is it a sand dune?
It's a June.
It's a June. Yeah.
Yeah, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm smart?
And it's not a matter of smartness, it's just like a...
No, you can tell me. It's all right.
This is the thing. I mean, like, for all you're listening, one of the common misconceptions that people have about linguistics is like, what does this say about my intelligence or my correctness? And it's definitely not like, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, but it's simply like marking out this, I don't know, this change that's happening over time in the world. So, yeah, there is definitely a trend. If you ask people of, the generation above us, maybe our parents, to say words like A-double-S-U-M-E, assume versus assume, they'd be much more likely to say assume than assume.
Wow, they must be
or
really
issue
dumb.
or issue.
Issue.
Yeah, and so that's Yod Coalescence.
Can you pass me an issue?
Yeah, a tissue.
Tissue.
That's that's a bit of linguistics, a bit of language science for you.
So you were able to like find out where Reuben's from and how smart I am just by sort of listening to us. I met a professor
Matt Damon?
who is a professor of logic. Who could do kind of like the same thing. I was like, he was telling me about logic. I was like, all right, can you give me an example? He said, all right, you own a doghouse. I was like, yeah, I own a doghouse. That means you probably have a dog. And I was like, yeah. Which means you probably have a family. I was like, yeah. Which means you probably have a wife. I was like, yeah. I said, I was able to work out that you were a straight man by the fact that you owned a doghouse. And so, I was explaining this to someone else later. I said, so there's a logic. I couldn't really explain it. I was like, I'll give you an example. And so I said to him, hey, do you own a doghouse? And he said, no. And so I said, that means you're gay. It's logic. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That was a bad joke. Strip that one from the record too, Reuben, when you edit this.
Yeah.
This is assuming that Reuben does any editing of this podcast whatsoever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Edit that.
Yeah. We're not a very politically correct podcast, really.
All right.
We've heard a lot of people.
By design.
So you should be able to say anything.
Yeah.
Did you have something you wanted to tell us about, Nadia? Do you have like something about art that you can explain?
About art. Well, I was just wondering, because you guys been saying that you're gonna talk about space, and I was just very interested what if you ever
We haven't got up to the space bit yet. I was going to talk about
coming
space as
later.
kind of like a big topic thing, because there was another SpaceX launch that I was looking up today.
Well, yeah, the whole fact that we are going to go to the moon and stay there
Yeah.
in 2024.
Stay there.
Yeah, as in there's going to be like a permanent moon base.
I like the idea that just the astronauts bring their sleeping bags.
Yeah.
And like, just like
It's a
stay
camp
there.
out!
Yeah.
Bring some marshmallows. Are you asleep? Me either.
It's actually crazy with the American sort of space program at the moment. Because on one hand, you've got NASA and the government sort of being like, yeah, we're going to go to the moon in 2024. We're going to go up on the SLS spacecraft, SLS rocket, the Orion spacecraft, and it's going to be great. And we're going to build this big orbiting space station around the moon, and it's going to cost $100 billion, and we've already spent $50 billion, so we better do it now.
Classic.
It's like, yeah, and they say we're going to do it in 2024. Whereas at the same time, Elon Musk is on the other side being like, we got this rocket, we're halfway through building it. It's going to cost $5 million per launch, and it's going to take 100 people to Mars at a time, and we're going to do it in 2022. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Is that true?
Well, who do we believe?
Well, who's done more space launches and has had more success
Who's been
in
to the
space? Elon Musk or NASA?
Has Elon Musk
NASA?
been to the moon?
No, but he did send his car to Mars.
And Elon Musk says it's 50% chance that we live in a simulation.
Yeah. What do we think about that? I think that is an irrelevant question. That's what I think about that. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I feel like that's a quote for something of like, if this is a simulation, then it's a good one. What is that a quote from?
Probably you. Just claim it.
Yeah, I'll claim it.
Elliot Peck.
No, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, if this is the Matrix, I'm pretty, like, happy with the Matrix. I'm pretty okay with spending my days being a battery to the future super race.
What if we are like a version of Sims, though? That we are like a version of Sims, very, very advanced version of Sims for extraterrestrials. So there is someone playing you now, Elliot. You have no control whatsoever.
But same thing. So long
Yeah,
as
I can
I
see
feel
that.
it, because like like the simulation is strong enough that even when I am given that information, I go like, yeah, sure. Like I still feel like I have free will, and that's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Also, is it the important thing? Feeling like you have free will?
yeah, perception is reality. I'm gonna drive that one home all night long.
But but also like, is it more important to you like saying that you? Because all this comes down to is like a sense of like inner well-being or feeling like the reason you'd want to know if you're in a simulation is to like have control, right, and be like, so that I can like better my life or something.
Or just curiosity.
But could you do that? Like,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if either
I suppose that's what happens in the Matrix.
either you'd keep pursuing it and be miserable, or you'd rip yourself out of a good life and be miserable. Like, you're only suffering theoretically. Like, it's only in a similar way. Like I don't know. You know that thing of like, ooh, that smoke thing looks like a whale tail, like a whale's tail.
Wild how?
Wild how? Yeah.
That works there, with the smoke thing.
Who's that dude? You know Samuel L. Jackson's character in Django Unchained,
Yeah.
who like is like, if I were to,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, like his better deal is just to, I don't know if he ever like says this, but I feel like the thing with the character is like his better deal is just to go with not freedom. Like, or sorry, my point is, you wouldn't be any happier
Oh,
if
this has become legitimate slavery.
yeah.
I mean, the point in comparing it to slavery is, I think, a good one, if you're saying you don't have any free will in either case. But I don't think it's nice to be a slave either in chains or not having free will in my life.
No, but I think the thing that comes, like, in this instance is the whole, like, ignorance is bliss thing. Whereas, like, in the instance of being a slave, you have a pretty strong understanding of how
I'm a
the world
slave.
could be better. Yeah, you're like, I am a slave. Life could be much better, but it won't be. As opposed to like this current proposed hypothesis of a simulation,
So if
where
you
we
could,
say the world could be better, but I'm like, nah, I'm pretty good with the world now. Like, I don't really know what the better world would look like, and I'm okay not knowing that.
So if you were a slave, you'd prefer not to know that you're a slave.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Because
I mean, that's
in
your
the
choice, I
instance,
guess.
in the instance that you're a slave, it's highly unlikely that you can stop being a slave.
Maybe.
And if your life as a slave is good, like, I mean, if you're not being actively taught, I don't know, like, if you just, like, work in a field and you're like, yeah, this is just life, I don't really get paid, I just, like, I mean, if your life is neutral or you're enjoying your, like, okay, so, like, say you're, like, a house slave, like that guy in Django Unchained.
Or Dobby.
Or Dobby. If they didn't know, then it's like, there's nothing actually, like, the suffering you're experiencing in that instance is like psychological and emotional, and it's through like the knowledge that you don't have control and that like people related to you are suffering. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean,
Or you
it's the
could
same
feel
as the
shit
thing
not
of-
having the knowledge. You could be like, fuck, what's it all for? Why am I stuck in this house cleaning up? Why can't I leave? Oh, you know how to leave. Does that mean I'm a slave?
But also, maybe the stronger intelligence is to ignore that, you know, inverted commas, truth of being like, I have an understanding of what my life could be. However, I also know that isn't going to happen, and that the way to enjoy my life the most now is by not comparing my current experience to my potential experience. Like, in the same way that I could be like, oh, like, imagine my life if I were a billionaire.
Yeah, I
would
do
have
all the
lots
time.
of agency. But I don't currently hate my life upon the basis of comparing it to that of billionaires. Especially because, dear listeners, money's not everything. But, you know, like, having that level of agency, like, sure, like, I'll go to, you know, live in Panama for a year. And, like, well, that's not going to happen. So I'm pretty happy with what's happening now.
I mean, I'm not going to argue against you thinking like that because you think it's the best thing for you to do. But our axioms on this are like totally different. I want the truth, even if it's going to hurt me. I want to try and do things that are super unrealistic or difficult or even impossible until I find out that they're impossible or succeed at them or find a better thing to do. I'd much rather know if I was a slave. I'd much rather know if I actually have free will. Not to say that you should prefer to know as well, but it's just interesting that we've got such different ideas about that.
Yeah, I think that is one of those things of, like, at the end of the day, it's only once you are aware of those unhappy truths that you realize that you'd rather not know them, and so you can, like, further prepare to, like, avoid them in the future.
Oh, so you're kind of like playing what's that? Is that like a Bayesian game? Where it's like, you know, I can see if I receive this piece of information, I'd do this. So I'm going to take that action now.
To not receive that information. Yeah, basically. Like absolute truth is probably pretty dissatisfying. So the way of being truly hedonistic and kind of like enjoying my life is to not absorb that absolute truth. Blah.
Right.
Everyone hates Elliot now.
Only the scientists.
What's your motivation for knowing the truth?
It's basically an axiom. I just want to know the truth. I don't know if it goes any deeper than that. I mean, truth is very useful day to day, but I think even if it wasn't useful, I'd still want to know the truth for its own sake. I think I put value on knowing the truth by itself. Even though most truths that I learn are useful to do other things like increase, you know, happiness in the world or something like that, or increase my power to create happiness in the world or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on this, Nadia?
I also feel like, that like pursuing, like there's, I don't know, the feeling, the truth like itself, there is, I think, like a common feeling amongst us that it is something dark, that you kind of
truth is
sacrifice, that like in terms of if you do as like this like philosopher's mindset that you pursue your like life like searching for truth. You also it's also this embedded, this sense of like constant suffering is like embedded in it, and I feel like you kind of like once you have this like this like I would say like this power in you to like know like this is this ultimate truth about the universe and like why we're here, what are we doing, and like all these questions that are like existential, but on this like sense that we all have them on some level or another, and we just kind of either, I think whenever we dwell in that too much, we become like quite frightened of how meaningless our life is, and like how in this ultimate of things, and that's how we are limited by our perception and by our brain and by our consciousness. But also I think in terms of speaking about our consciousness, we are a part, whether it's a matrix or not, we are a part of it, and I think we often like forget that there is a sense of like unity in like all of us, and that we have a lot of actually that there is this that we often like I think close ourselves in our own brain and in our own like perception of reality, but I think like universe-wise we are a part of this whole matrix, and I think we can't really leave either. Like I think there's sense of warmth in it that we are like the part of this big deal that it's yeah.
Yeah, you're all stuck in it together.
Orwell had it right with the double thing, right? Of being like, I am, I am aware of, like, I guess maybe that's getting back to that Bayesian thing that you were saying, whatever that is. I'm uneducated. But, like, yeah.
I think I was misusing the term anyway.
But anyway, like, whatever that, surely there's a word for that, of, like, I recognize that this is what I'm in now, but I'm also able to ignore that enough to, like, get on with it or, like, engage with the world. Yeah. Because if I just sat being sad about the fact that I'm in the matrix or in an imperfect world, then I could, be sad and depressed about that for the rest of my life. That would be a waste.
Yeah. I feel like there's one thing in terms of like humans and that like our own thing, like Nietzsche talks about, it's like there's this thing that we kind of between good and evil as like human beings, that in our everyday life, if we go on, there's these questions of ethics and like how we always have a choice, and we often feel it even on small instances that like some things are good ethically, some not. You can be religious or not, but I think we on an everyday basis we have it. And he says this like one thing, that there's one thing like beyond it, and it's like love. Basically, I think if we all like apply it to our like daily basis and just like be directed towards love towards others, just like human beings, and act out of this like love, compassion, like the world we just like and it's not even I don't feel it's like naive. I think there's like a lot of thing that like love can heal us by just like our human interactions towards other people that even that you don't know or you know.
Oh, wait, sorry, just to clarify, he's saying the one thing that's outside like ethical determination between right and wrong is love, and you shouldn't think of things as right and wrong. You should think of them as whether they're done out of love or not.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, because I think there's like we have a lot. I think this like black and white type of like we all have. Like life is not kind of. I think this like black and white doctrine that everything is like is quite. It's very terrifying. It has a lot of this kind of stigma of things being, and we are kind of grayish on area. We can of course like, and I think you always have a choice like to get better yourself, and like to kind of you could make a lot of mistakes in the past and stuff. But like I think once you shift your perception and stop like thinking in this like you can, and like direct with like love towards it's like everything on like your daily basis. I think that's pretty much my take on it.
It's probably a good heuristic for behaviour. Like generally, if you're a loving person, things will probably go pretty well. I think I agree with you there.
I think there's because I think we do heaps of things on the everyday basis out of fear. That's the main thing. And you can call it more like now, like psychological basis, like anxiety to do. But the prime feeling of it is just like a fear that we have embedded in our nature, kind of. And I think it manifests in like different ways, but I think that's the trouble with it. I think once you do things out of fear, it usually sends this like you ending up in just different place, your mindset wise and stuff. But it's also this like now when I think about it, what do you reckon about this power of manifestation? That what do you manifest kind of into real, like how you kind of think how does it manifest into reality?
Are you talking about when you try to do something, it'll happen?
Yeah, if you think constantly about things, or just like have this kind of that your thoughts kind of become things, but in the sense of that, like if you tune yourself into this like higher vibration in terms of that you think you think at certain goals, but also like towards you kind of manifest certain things that you like to achieve, and like you take actions with it, but that's I don't know how to describe it really. It's just this whole like movement, which is like basically about manifesting things.
Are you talking like in a supernatural kind of way, or just kind of saying that if you really want something subconsciously and consciously, you'll seek to get it, and sometimes actually get it?
I think there is a lot of. So there's a kind of, a lot of people that would like, I don't know, like in history and stuff, that were kind of using this kind of, I don't know, like Da Vinci, or like, they were using this power of manifestation to like achieve things. So they were like constantly, let's say, like thinking, and like it is a bit supernatural, but like you can claim it as supernatural, but nowadays it has a lot of these like scientific things behind it. It's almost like they're it's more I wouldn't call it supernatural, I call it spiritual, because it's like a new whole like thing within the New Age movement and stuff like this. But if you guys don't, let's not talk about it.
No. Wait, what is it?
I'm trying to understand.
So I think with the deal of manifestation is that like you can actually manifest. So like you can manifest certain things in your brain, kind of like if you constantly like, oh, let's say I want to become a millionaire, and you kind of, this thought becomes kind of your reality. So you start to, first it's just thoughts, and then you start to like adjust your actions towards it. So it's like thoughts kind of turn into actions, but on a level of really know what you want, and then kind of sending this signal. So it is quite spiritual, but it's also, you also align your actions within it, and then kind of you see like sooner or later that like this kind of goal that you set on yourself happens sooner or later, if you are really genuine. It's just a matter of, as well, of like how much do you want something. I feel it's just the first thing, and then, but see, it's difficult me to because now it just seems like, oh, if you really want something, then kind of do it, and it's not only that. It's just the there's this documentary kind of about it. You can have a look at Netflix. It's called Secret. It's about because the whole thing scientifically or like spiritually is called the law of attraction. Like Jim Carrey talks about it a lot in his talks and stuff. That like, but he also says, for example, Jim Carrey says that like, yeah, he used to like do like and manifest like things that he wants from the universe, and the universe would give it to him. But then
there's a big difference between saying that it's kind of just like granted to you because you wanted it a lot, and saying that it's like really wanting something is a good way to, motivate yourself to take actions to actually get it.
Yeah, so I think there is, in this particular thing, there is more spirituality involved, or kind of more of this kind of that it's not only like kind of action based purely like, oh, I want, but it's kind of sending a certain signal, meditating on it. So that's the difference, is that like it kind of a lot of now like spiritual gurus include this kind of meditation as a part of it, that you kind of sending a certain signal. The big question is that like whether you know what you want, where it's like this desires of yours very ego driven.
No, sorry, finish, and then I just have a question to like,
No, I was thinking like the big question of it is that like to what extent those needs and desires of yours are like ego driven, and whether you, when you get it actually, whether you, that would gratify, this pursuit of happiness or whatever it is, that it would make you happy, or like on what cost kind of a thing. That's the big thing, because you can really, really, I guess, like align everything around you to get to the point where you want to be, and then realize that this is not what you need or want, or like that this was just an illusion and it's not the
This might be a basic question, and you may have covered it, but so what's the difference between sending these signals and like a traditional prayer?
I actually, honestly, because I think I would have to like just like I usually give up on like in terms of like learning about it. I usually like see like them like meditating and doing those things where they kind of send those signals, and then like your actions kind of you sooner or later things that like good things start to happen to you, and you kind of take the opportunities and stuff like this. In terms of what's the actual difference between like prayer, just like by I really want to be healthy, or like I know you really want some like particular thing. I think I know in my viewpoint, because I'm not 100% sure, but in my viewpoint is that your actions need to be aligned with it. So once if you really manifest something, you need to like realize that it's not that probably just sending things like I want to get this and that. I don't know if it works. Maybe that I have no idea. Maybe you're like freaking manifest you want $1 million and like if you're really good in meditation or whatever, maybe you'll get it. I have no idea actually. Maybe those guys like once you really dig into this meditation thing and stuff, like maybe it is okay. I don't know, but I think that would like make a lot of millionaires.
Yeah, if it
probably
worked,
not
if it worked, you'd expect anyone doing it to be like the top of everything, but they're
Pretty
not.
much.
So
But check out there is a lot of those like the whole thing is called the law of attraction basically, and it's a very interesting concept, I think. But to what extent it actually works, and to what extent it's a bit that it is like you're meditating and you also like do a lot of actions and stuff like this, and then it's kind of natural, like if you want to be then it's kind of
it would be
natural,
the
it's gonna
actions that
happen.
actually get you
pretty
anything.
much. So like
meditating might help motivate you, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
but I think like what's the interesting part is that like even your actions and stuff, you kind of need to send a certain signal to other people, so you would get we're not living in a bubble kind of. So I think there needs to be some kind of spirituality involved in it, that you kind of attract certain people into your life and you attract some events into your life if you change your vibration on kind of this thing that you want, or like whatever it is. That I think it is about like that we are kind of energies. I think once you change your vibration, you just start to attract different things into your life. That's, I think, pretty much kind of the core of it. And that's why I think the meditation is like quintessential of it, because then you're kind of changing you as your thoughts and like who you kind of on this kind of energetical level, I feel. And I think that's what happens. Then you kind of align actions with it as well. But I think actions itself wouldn't, because you live with other people, and once other people feel you, or like you just start to just attract different things into your life, probably better things if you want something good. I don't know.
So, speaking of the scientific method before, can anyone come up with a hypothesis that could prove or disprove any aspect of this?
I mean, no, I guess that's the point, right? Like, if it were something that could be tested empirically, people would be doing it and there would be results. But I feel like because it is so contingent upon, like, the internal, inverted commas, willpower thing of, like, I wish for this, and then the effect that vibration has upon the world, we don't currently have a way of measuring that.
Well, if it's untestable and anything that happens could be attributed to it, then we can't, we don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
But if we can I think we can find a way to test it. There must be a way to measure willpower of people.
How?
Given different tasks. Well, say you took a bunch of people and you put them in front of like $100 and you said, don't take the $100. And then
That's already a test.
Yeah, that's a test of willpower. Well, it's a test of willpower and ethics and whatever else. But you can definitely measure different ways of willpower. Perhaps you can come up with other tests of that. Then you take the top people in that test and you say, really, really, really want this thing. And then you take the bottom people of that test and you say, really, 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 really want this thing. And you see if there's any difference between the two groups. Could that be a way to test this?
Yes.
It will be over years, I guess. I think you would have to. I think maybe that you could maybe just a certain experiment like this would have to like kind of I think go for like years kind of to be able to kind of catch up with whether or not those people achieved what they kind of
And you'd have to have high and low willpower people who are told not to try really hard to want the thing, to be able to have something to
But I
compare
think
to.
in general, like scientifically, you could like just get those people who are doing also all those sorts of like meditations and stuff like this, and just like do have like a testable group and stuff, and see if they achieved what they wanted.
Just track their lives already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be like a way of.
I suppose you could find out something that way. Yeah. I'm very skeptical of it, I have to say.
Cracked it too far.
Oh, Reuben's legs are gone.
Well,
Science.
coming down on coming down.
Coming down and coming down.
What are the conclusive thoughts of this evening?
It's really cold.
You on this shawl?
Sure.
Yeah, Elliot, about an hour ago. It's so warm tonight.
so
I'm
warm.
only wearing one jumper.
I'm not even saying it sarcastically.
I've been thinking warm thoughts.
Speaking about, I'm gonna get some warm milk. Thank you guys for having me here as a guest this week.
Thanks for chatting with us, Nadia.
It's been our pleasure. You're
It was
coming down.
beautiful.
We're
I'll
here
catch up with
every
you next
week.
week.
Coming down.
Yeah, I
That'd
think
be a funny podcast.
I am also
coming
fighting the
down.
cold.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
All right.
see you all next week. And coming
Clap, clap.
down.
Edit.